The term of the lease is the length of time you're leasing the space. The date the landlord turns over the space to the tenant, also known as when the tenant takes possession of the space. So it's delivery date or possession date. If there isn't any landlord's work and they're turning the space over to you as is, this date is often within a few days of lease execution. If there is landlord's work, it'll usually be once their work is substantially complete. Once you take possession of the space, you're responsible for its upkeep, which includes the utilities. Since you can't do any work in your space until you have building permits, I'd suggest not accepting possession until you've received your permits. The landlord may want to add language that requires you to diligently and continuously pursue receipt of those permits, which is fine within reason. Particularly if there's a tenant currently in the space you're going to be taking, or if there's additional landlord's work to be completed prior to turning over the space to you, the possession date could be several months after the lease signing date. If this is the case, it's a good idea to have some penalties in there that if the landlord doesn't deliver the space on time, and all of that is covered in a separate delivery date delay module. What you're trying to avoid is a situation where you're waiting for a space that's massively delayed. Instead, you'd want to have the option to walk away from the project and pursue a different opportunity that might allow you to get open more quickly. Not all LOIs specify a lease commencement date, and there's no need to add one if it isn't in the landlord's form. The lease commencement date is usually right after the lease is executed, and if it isn't specified, that's the assumed lease commencement date. That doesn't mean that rent starts as soon as you sign the lease, though. It just means the lease is binding on that date. Many leases include an option to renew or extend the lease after the term expires, sometimes multiple options. Your renewal option should include renewal term. A renewal option is almost always shorter than the original term of the lease. For instance, a 10-year lease with a 5-year option to renew. A number of options, 1 to 2, is most common. The general rule of thumb many landlords use is not to give more term and options than the term of the original lease. Renewal options benefit the tenant more than the landlord because you're not obligated to renew. You just have the right to continue using your space if you want to, without having to renegotiate the whole lease. All of the terms from the original lease survive, except you'll have a new rent. The lease may specify a fixed dollar amount in rent, or it may be set at fair market value for your space. As the tenant, you generally want to agree on a fixed rent rather than being tied to market, which you can't possibly predict. It is possible that market rent for your space could go down, but if that's the case, it's probably unlikely you'll want to stay in the space. You just have to wonder what would have to happen to make market rent go down, even in the face of inflation, which should be pulling the value up. Did the area deteriorate, or is there a lot more inventory on the market than there was when you were leasing? Both scenarios would point you towards looking to lease elsewhere, which is just to say you don't want to bet on a fair market rent going down and that being a huge benefit to you. Instead, you may want to follow the escalation structure you proposed back in the rent section and lock in a rent. The common compromise we'll see is to set a fixed rent for the first option and fair market rent for the second option. If you agree to a fair market rent, that means you've just pushed the negotiation around what fair market rent is down the road to the time when you're actually exercising your option. If you and the landlord can't agree at that time on a rent, there are a few different ways to settle the dispute, which will all be spelled out in the lease. Last, an option needs a notice period. This doesn't need to be in the LOI, but it can be. We'd save it for the lease if it isn't already in the landlord's form. But if it is, a notice period is how much time you have to give notice that you're going to exercise your option or claim your right to use it. And this will be spelled out in a number of months before your lease expires. As the tenant, the shorter the window, the better. Your business can change a lot over a matter of months, and it can be difficult to make a decision about whether to stay in your space 2 years in advance. On the other side of the coin, the landlord is going to want as much time as possible to plan. Obviously, marketing and releasing your space takes time and money. The last component of a renewal option you may see, particularly as a new business, is a sales threshold. The landlord may want to give you an option to renew only if your business is successful, as measured by your sales exceeding a certain level. Obviously, it's better to get an option without this kind of qualifier, but if it's critical for the landlord, make sure you've thought through the threshold they've proposed. You don't want it to be overly optimistic. The renewal option shouldn't be a reward for exceptional performance, but instead should be your right, so long as the business is profitable for you. If your business isn't highly dependent on the revenue generated within the space, so it's more of a showroom, a sales threshold wouldn't be the best measure of success. If we're representing you, we can talk through what some other options might be that you could use as a threshold in the place of sales.